How's it going, everybody? It's your boy Wardy, and as you can see, we're back at it talking about the Amazons, and we're also back at it discussing a player that has been long linked to the New York Mets in recent years and is without question the hottest name available in this year's trade market, none other than the superstar himself from the San Diego Padres and Juan Soto. Juan Soto and the Mets we have talked at great lengths on and will continue to do so because a recent report came out that was very interesting that I have both good and bad things to say on. I really want to break down not only as a content creator but as a fan what we should be taking for what it is versus taking certain reports and rumors as a grain of salt, and that has a lot to do with this specific report. So let's get into it. From Hector Gomez, stating the following earlier this morning: a person very close to Juan Soto just told me that although the Yanks have a very good chance at getting him, he believes that Soto has a better chance of staying put in San Diego for the 2024 season at minimum, and then also know that the Mets and Giants are also involved in trade talks for the superstar. So I want to know your initial thoughts and reactions down below, because I know the elephant that we got to get out of the room is, yes, Hector Gomez. In case you're unaware who Hector Gomez is, he is a reporter based out of DR in which he has been accurate plenty of times, but also has been inaccurate plenty of times as well. And because of this issue, we see a lot of these guys having watered down type reports and content. It reminds me a lot of, okay, you know, the boy who cried wolf. Finally, when he finally has something where it's real, people aren't going to believe it right away for what it is until we find out further reporting from others, more well-renowned reporting, whether it's from guys like Jeff Passan, Ken Rosenthal, just to name a few, right? So I would like to clear the air that we should not be taking every report, especially when discussing Hector Gomez, for more than, say, a grain of salt at times, because he has yet to prove his consistency. Like I said, he has been right in the past. We have referenced him on the channel every single offseason, but we've also noticed that this is the same man who, while he very well could be accurate about this reporting, because yes, Juan Soto is from the DR, and if he's going to get anything right, it's reports that have to do with Dominican players, because there's that natural connection. That is what he's known for, versus reports that he had over the past 2 weeks saying that, you know, that the Dodgers very much are in on Shohei Ohtani, but are also in and love the idea of bringing in Mike Trout as well. See, that I personally find to be baloney until proven otherwise, because there's just obvious reasons as to why that's an obstacle and why we could see that not happening. But getting into this report in particular, why are we highlighting it today? It's a couple things. One, it's Juan effing Soto. This is not just any Joe Schmo of a player. So because it's Juan Soto, we are going to go out of our way to pretty much discuss most things in which he is linked, especially when it regards the New York Metropolitans. But we also need to keep in mind when evaluating reports like this that we cannot view it as, oh my goodness gracious, the Mets are for certain going to go out, give the highest offer, they're going to go and land this guy, because that is the farthest thing from the truth. Juan Soto and the Mets connection has been fairly hush-hush this offseason, aside from Jeff Passan a month or two ago stating that we already discussed on the channel, saying how, you know, the Mets very much could be a scary possibility of a team that goes out and acquires Juan Soto this MLB offseason. I've discussed Soto at further length in a recent segment on Bleacher Report over the past month. Make sure to check that, links down below in case you haven't already, as I broke down trade proposals. As you see here, these were the three that I proposed personally. The first one no one wants. It's an absolutely horrendous proposal for the Mets. I'd like to make that clear. I do not want to see that happen. The second one is a little bit more understanding for sure, and the third one is most appealing to Mets fans. So I tried to cater it both to Padres and Mets, but one thing is certain in these is that the Padres, what they need most via trade is starting pitching, and it is infielders. And those are two things when you look at third baseman and first baseman, not so much third base because they have Manny there, but first base especially is an area of need for the San Diego Padres that they would like to address, and starting pitching is the big one. And when you evaluate the Mets versus other clubs, you do come to the realization that given their current prospect farm is not nearly as deep as, say, a rival in the New York Yankees, who have a plethora of interest in Juan Soto to acquire him. The Yanks have better starting pitching depth, both currently on their roster and in their farm, that could trump the Mets, and a potential trade should it come down to those specific types of assets and areas that the Padres look to address. So I like to make it clear that just because the Mets are linked here, it does not mean that they are going to go out and land him, nor do they have the best shot. And on top of that, the initial report here is pretty much saying that yes, you know, he could be traded, but we're believing now that that might not be the case. Now, I think it is still a coin flip on the Juan Soto front. I'm teetering constantly because on one hand, it makes so much sense why they would part with him and their financial struggles right now. I very well could see Soto dealt this offseason for that reason. But then you also see, since Seidler's passing, if the mindset has always been the same in approaching Juan Soto, or if it's different now. And for Soto, how does he feel after the passing of Seidler as well? What was that current connection like? Is he going to kind of have the mindset of wanting to rally around the way that Fernando Tatis Jr. does, Manny, and others in that clubhouse that really want to ball out and have their best seasons imaginable in memory of Seidler for the 2024 season and beyond? Could he now have a somewhat change of heart in his future based on Seidler's passing? Again, I'm not going to go further to think that that is going to be the case, but these are just questions that we have now, as there's a lot of question marks with Juan Soto and his very uncertain future this MLB offseason. But don't get it twisted. You see the stat line down below. He is one of the best bats in all of the game. He's only at 24, 25 years of age. He has another year of control in his contract. And yes, you do not want to give up an arm and a leg for a guy that's still likely going to hit the free agent market, which is why I understand the counters to not wanting to be in for of someone like Juan Soto. But at the same time, if you land Juan Soto and you could potentially land him on an extension, especially, which is something that Steve Cohen's dollars can certainly make happen, I don't think there's going to be too many Mets fans complaining on what you're getting, which truly is one of the best bats in all the game and is only at the young age of 25. He fits both the short-term and long-term vision in that sense. But of course, who wants to give up key prospect assets, especially for a Mets prospect farm that is finally starting to get structure and built? It's not ideal to want to give up all those assets right away for a guy that at the end of the day still could be parted with a year from now. There are no guarantees. So I understand the pros and the cons 1000%. But I also understand that this is a New York Mets team that is going to be linked to everyone and their mother since Steve Cohen became owner, especially. It was even like that to a degree with the Wilpons, even though it was shot down quick because the Wilpons wouldn't want to spend the money. Steve Cohen does, so it's a different landscape now when we evaluate his trade market. Now, for me, I can understand why it's not the best belief that, okay, Hector Gomez has a scoop on the Mets actively in trade talks for Juan Soto versus anyone that's more credible, in which there's a laundry list of people that have stronger credibility. I think you could look at, especially Hector Gomez, as in certain aspects, I don't even want to say a Bob Nightingale of the DR, because Nightingale, while he has been wrong plenty of times, he's also been accurate a lot more than Hector as well. And Jim Bowden, I think you could also make that fair argument. Bowden is one who does work, of course, with The Athletic, has been a long time MLB GM in the past and shares input and shares sources, but Bowden is someone that I personally do not take with much more than a grain of salt, because since I started covering the Mets 3+ years ago, he has not been on the money about pretty much anything regarding the Mets. It's been very few things, and baseball as a whole, it's been a lot more speculative and assumption versus factual reporting and finding out key information from people and actually being right, so if you want to do comparisons, maybe you could do that. And again, this is not to slight anyone here, but the reality is that even the top dogs get things wrong every single year. We've seen it with Ken in the past. We've seen it with Heyman in the past, obviously. We've seen it in little increments with Passan, but they are few and far in between. No one's perfect, but there is a difference between being wrong every now and then versus a Hector Gomez who, you're going to get some type of interesting report out of every single week, regardless on what is happening around the market and the trade and free agent aspects. It's always a toss-up. Before we get further into the video, I have to cut away into this after I did my initial recording, because I forgot to shout out my man at Vintage_Mets, who is not only a good friend of mine, but a great supporter on the channel. Please make sure to follow him on Instagram. That is VNTG_Mets, where you're seeing a guy have the best Mets wardrobe, you could argue, out of all Mets fans out there. I mean, that might be a tall task to say, but seriously, if you look at the guy's wardrobe, he comes out with consistent fits every single week, just balling out, dripped out head to toe in the best Mets outfits imaginable. We're talking about someone that has Mets merch in clean condition from the 80s, from the 90s, that he wears on the regular, has been a longtime supporter of mine, had the privilege of meeting him multiple times at Mets games. First, it was at a Mets wildcard game, unfortunately, when Max blew it last year to San Diego, and then most recently was towards the end of this season, and I think it was the doubleheader against the Phillies, even though I could be wrong. Came up to me and was beyond kind enough to give me a hat that he custom made himself, and which he has rolled out there saying, "I love it here," which means that he loves not only the Mets, but he loves Citi Fielding and loves everything about the fan base. Not only a fantastic wardrobe that this guy has, he showcases constantly, he talks Mets live on Instagram as well, but an even better human being. So seriously, shout out to you again, my man. I hope you check this out. So I just want to throw this your way, Mets fans, because even if you just take it as a grain of salt, it has to do with Juan Soto. The Mets have long been connected, and it wouldn't shock anyone if we end up finding out that, say, hey, the Mets are in deep talks for Juan Soto, and even if they don't land him, it wouldn't be because of, there wasn't a valiant effort. The Mets went out of their way to try to land Juan Soto at the 2022 MLB trade deadline. They fell short because Mike Rizzo of the Nationals said, "I'm absolutely not doing a trade with you, Mets," and the Mets at that time offered everyone in their farm, pretty much headlined by Francisco Alvarez, stars, headlined by the Brett Beatty's, potentially Mark Vientos's, Alex Ramirez's, who's fallen off a little bit since then, etc. So the Mets have offered basically their best assets imaginable, couldn't get the job done, and wouldn't shock me if that were to be the case again this offseason, because when you look at their farm once more, they just don't have exactly what I think the Padres would want most, given where the roster's at and given where the farm is at, versus a team like the Yanks, even like the Giants to a degree, who can provide more almost MLB caliber pitching that can impact the Padres for 2024 and beyond. So it's a very interesting discussion to get into, but of course it's Juan Soto, so we have to have it, and we'll continue to do just that regardless on his fate this MLB offseason. So fans, continue to let me know your thoughts down below. Thank you all so much for the continued support, and once more, make sure to check out, actually not even once more, for the first time I'm saying this, make sure to check out tonight's live show. We are doing our Free Agent Frenzy live show. We're breaking down all the latest on Mets connected free agent targets, also guys that could be connected that aren't reportedly yet, also the latest on the trade front as well, just everything regarding the New York Metropolitans. We're going to have content coming out every single day this week as we inch oh so close to MLB winter meetings, which is a week from now. Thank you again, folks, and as always, let's go Mets. Peace.